we can get started.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Swick is here now, and we're ready when you are.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. So, special meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, April 15th, 2024. Time is 6:15 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Rojas.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Swick.
Here.
Peyton. And she's still not with us. Keithley.
Here.
And Langbart.
Here.
Okay, so we've got 5 out of 6 currently present, with Councilmember Peyton absent at the moment here. And if we could go ahead and have someone lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, excuse absences. As we said, currently Member Peyton is out, and I'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Rojas with a second by Keithley. Any further discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Keithley?
Aye.
And Langbart?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. So tonight's agenda is approved. That'll take us to item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. We have 1 item tonight on the consent agenda, and that is the minutes of the special meeting, March 27th, 2024. Does any member wish to remove that item for a separate discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Kennedy to approve tonight's consent agenda. We have a second by Langbart. Any further discussion before we vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Keithley?
Aye.
And Langbart?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5 in the affirmative with 1 absent, and that was the approval of tonight's consent agenda. Item F, mayoral proclamations, none. Item G, public presentation prior notice. Did we have anyone signed up for that one?
Yes, we have Catherine Shaky from the Kachemak Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and we're gonna promote her to a panelist here so she can present.
Okay.
All right. Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you loud and clear.
Okay, great. I will go ahead and share my screen here. Thank you so much for making time for me tonight. I just have about 5 minutes of a presentation that gives a high-level overview of who the Research Reserve is, in case you aren't familiar with us, and then introduces a funding opportunity that I wanted to make sure the community of Seldovia is aware of. And then if you have any questions or you want to schedule another time for follow-up, I'm happy to talk about that. So I'm the manager of the Ketchikan Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. Our mission is to enhance understanding and appreciation of Alaskan coastal ecosystems to ensure that they remain healthy and productive. And we're one of 30 NERs, as the acronym there, across the country. We're the only one in Alaska, and we're the largest geographic span for a research reserve, which is basically all of Ketchikan Bay and the surrounding state park land. And we are a partnership between NOAA and a state entity. In this case, we're part of the University of Alaska Anchorage. And some of you may have been around when the NER was established in 1999. Back then, we were part of Fish and Game. But then in 2015, we switched over to be part of UAA. So because we are part of NOAA as well, we have access to some funding opportunities that are competitive just across the NER system. So I'm here to talk about some bipartisan infrastructure law funding that is available for both land acquisition and habitat restoration. So just so you're aware spatially of our boundaries, the boundary in red are the Research Reserve's boundaries. We don't own or manage any land, but we, in this case, have a project with the city of Homer where we are passing through funding so that the city can purchase lands, and they'll be the end owner, and we're just the administrative entity, but also partnering on outreach and education around the project. So we have 4 program areas here at the NER. The question is sort of, why are we involved with this? We have a long-term monitoring program. Some of you might be aware that we have a water quality station at the Seldovia fuel dock. That's been there for almost 20 years now. We also have some weather stations at the Homer Harbor and in Anchor Point. We also have a harmful species monitoring program where we monitor for invasive European green crab and phytoplankton for harmful algal blooms, as well as tunicate monitoring, invasive tunicate monitoring. And then we have a research program that includes watershed ecology, headwater salmon streams, and then also nearshore and marine ecology. We have a coastal training program that is designed to get the science and data that we are collecting and learning into the hands of decision makers to share that information. So we offer trainings and skill development. And then we have an educational program, K through 12, and then early career development as well. And then we have our local community council, which helps make sure that our research and monitoring is relevant to the community and stays grounded in what's important to the communities that depend on a healthy Ketchikan Bay. So those include 9 council members. Michael Opheim is one of our council members who is an established member. Paul Zico is also an agency partner, since we partner a lot with NOAA Kasutsna Bay Lab, and attends our quarterly meetings. So this is just a snapshot of some of the things we've learned about the importance of peatlands and headwater salmon streams over the last 20 years. We know carbon and nitrogen flow from headwater salmon streams where you may not even realize there are baby salmon in your backyards all the way to the estuaries. And then we also know peatlands are drying across the peninsula and that they're really helpful for stormwater management. I know you don't have many peatlands, but you do have some, or at least wetlands across the bay in Seldovia. But this is just an example of how we've partnered with the Ketchikan Heritage Land Trust to identify land parcels that might be most beneficial to the general public to protect and conserve, because these peatlands are serving multiple functions. So they're reducing flooding, they're keeping carbon in the ground, and they're mitigating, or they're catching pollutants that might run into Ketchikan Bay otherwise. So this idea of nature-based solutions is this is a big term and message right now within NOAA, and they're focused on these watershed scale projects. And up here, what that has often meant is kind of protecting lands that are undisturbed or yet to be developed. So I just put in the slide here kind of the motivation behind NOAA's funding to enhance coastal resilience. And this is true for a multitude of funding opportunities, but you'll see themes here like preparedness and adaptation for coastal communities, mitigate impacts from hurricanes, coastal storms, flooding, sea level rise. So we're adapting as the local NER and entity that partners with NOAA to help communicate, well, okay, we don't have sea level rise here in Ketchimek Bay. We're not dealing with hurricanes, but we do, here's what resilience means to us who live around Ketchimek Bay. Habitat restoration and nature-based infrastructure. So in this case, we've worked with the city of Homer to purchase peatlands for stormwater management. And then other criteria are protecting lives and property, sustaining commercial recreation and subsistence fishing, recover threatened and endangered species, and then maintain and foster vibrant coastal economies and lifestyles. So we've gone through 2 rounds of this funding now where a committee on our KB or Community Council got together and with staff and the Ketchimek Heritage Land Trust did a prioritization process where we invited community members to give presentations on project priorities. And everything that was presented and discussed was focused on land acquisition and not restoration, but that's just because there wasn't a community restoration idea that surfaced as being a priority. So through this prioritization process that was informed by community members, we then put forth a proposal 2 years ago that resulted in funding last year of $1.2 million to protect several parcels in the Beluga wetlands area, so around the Homer Airport. And it's part of a larger stormwater management system that the city is undertaking, modeling after a Finnish design. I don't expect you to read all these criteria, but I wanted to just point out that right now we're starting discussions over here again with the community to identify project priorities, and we'd love to hear from Seldovia on what project priorities you might have that might be a good fit for this competitive funding. Just a schedule, in July, the notice of funding opportunity will come out. August, we submit letters of interest. We can submit up to 3 as the research reserve. I should say too, this is a specific pool of money that is available only to NERS. So it's less competitive than some of these national applications like America the Beautiful or the NOAA Coastal Resilience Fund. We have a pretty good shot at acquiring some of this money. And then November, you're invited to a full proposal stage, and then January, full proposals are due and awards are announced in March. They're 3-year projects. And again, we only have experience so far with land acquisition projects, but restoration projects are a possibility, as well as planning and design for restoration projects. So the other thing I'll mention is that both our staff at the Research Reserve and the Ketchimek Heritage Land Trust have some funding that was provided to help us support partners in developing proposals. So I'd be happy to help facilitate conversation or share more information with the community of Seldovia. If a priority project surfaces and is pitched to our lands committee, I'd be happy to help write a pre-proposal for that. Or if there's other ways we can be supportive as a NOAA liaison and helping identify needs for technical assistance. There's a lot of other funding opportunities we could look at that we could offer some varying levels of support in. So I'll just pause there, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask for questions or not, but if you have any, I can stick around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Any questions or comments that come to mind from council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I guess a question I have is, do you actually help communities identify what projects could be acceptable? Is that something you do within?
Yeah, we did that with land acquisition projects in the last year. So that's the nice thing about having the land trust available is they can talk about different types of conservation outcomes and what it might take to gauge landowner interest. They also can engage in landowner negotiations to see if there's an interest in a conservation outcome for their property. The restoration projects, I think that would look a little different, but I'd be happy to walk a group of people through the criteria for the restoration projects and talk about what I've learned. I guess the other thing is there's no match required for these projects, but it does help make the proposals more competitive to provide at least some matching funds. And then they range in the amounts too. So the planning and design phase for habitat restoration is between 200 to 300,000. The habitat restoration projects are more along the lines of a couple of $1 million. And then the land acquisition is 500,000 to 1.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. What during a land acquisition then, do the lands then revert to the Kachemak Bay Land Trust, or who owns them then after they're acquired?
Yeah, so the land trust prefers not to be the final end owner. In the case, I mean, they have parcels where they do that. That is something they would consider, I think, given the right situation. But in the case with the project we have with the city of Homer, the city is the final owner of the parcel, but there's a restriction on the deed that says it will only be used for conservation purposes. And then we're doing some replatting around the edges of some of the parcels they're acquiring so they can actually install infrastructure for stormwater management, like drain fields and things like that, because the conservation parcels cannot have infrastructure development. So it's a really creative partnership where the city of Homer is putting up some money. We were able to secure $1.2 million. We're buying a bunch of parcels, replatting, and then the city owns all of it in the end with just different restrictions on some of those parcels.
Okay, so crazy question then. So the land that was purchased, was any of that originally owned by the city to start with, or was that all private? Well, I know this is
Funny you
weird,
should
but
ask.
I get the land restriction piece of it. So just
Yeah. As of right now, no, we're purchasing lands from a couple of private landowners and from the borough, actually. So some of the feedback I've gotten from NOAA is we have to explain, why are you purchasing this from one public entity to another? That,
right.
we have to educate there. But then I did recently learn some of these private parcels were years ago owned by the city of Homer. They sold them, so they're now buying them back for a much higher rate.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no, and I get sometimes it takes that type of, mechanism to get the restrictions on these and then have them as dedicated, conservation lands. So, okay, cool. Any other questions, comments from council? Okay. Did you have more for your presentation, or was that
Nope.
it?
That's all I have, and Paul has my contact info, and so does Liz. And so if you'd like to get in touch with me and learn more, I'm happy to connect.
Okay, no, sounds great. Appreciate that presentation. Certainly something to chew on for us, and some good. Yeah, so we'll talk that over and see what we can come up with.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Catherine. Appreciate that. All right. Let's see here. Anyone else for public presentations on prior notice, Liz?
Yeah, we do have. No, this would be under items not on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, so the other one's probably for Walt.
Yeah, he'll go under the committee and advisory board report.
Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so if there's nothing else on item G, then item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda.
I'll stand up so you can see me. Hi, Mayor Campbell and city council members. I thought after Catherine's presentation, it'd be a good chance for me to introduce myself to the city council. I'm Paul Seco. I'm a new staff scientist down at Kasitzna Bay Lab at Mile 9 Jackaloff Bay Road. I'm on the NOAA side as well. We're a different arm of NOAA than the National Estuarine Research Reserve. We are the National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science. And our motto is science serving coastal communities. It's a pretty good motto. Let's see, we moved up from Oregon last summer. I started the job in October. I've been there for 6 months, and I still don't know exactly what my job is, but we're learning. We've had a lot of churn over there. Let's see, I'm the scientist that's permanently stationed on this side, and I live in Seldovia. We also have, I think, 7 staff members on the Homer side, and we have a new director, Reed Brewer, who came from the Kachemak Bay campus, and he's great as well. I guess I wanted to follow up after Catherine's presentation, mainly to say that, I'm here new in the community. I would like to be eyes and ears towards these kind of opportunities at NOAA, in the federal government, state institutions, whatnot, and bring those opportunities to our council here, to the community, for the benefit of our community. I'm really trying in my time here and going forward into the future. I hope to better integrate the lab into the community, and I'm all ears for anything, any ideas that you have, how we can integrate into the community, bring people out there, bring resources into the community. Anyway, I'm happy to help. Please get in touch. Specifically related to the land acquisition and conservation question, Liz, ostensibly as a representative of the city, Stephen Payton, SVT, and I had a quick spitballing session a few weeks ago, like to ask the question: are there lands that should be or could be prioritized for conservation here on the Seldovia side? Our answer was yes. We have a list of some potential ideas, but at the same time, I don't think it makes sense for 3 people to sit around and say, these should be prioritized. I think moving forward, if we want to go for this opportunity or other opportunities in the future, right, we should find a way to ask this question of the community. And when we get community support, we have a better chance of getting funded. So that's kind of what I'm looking for here. And it's a question, open question for the community. How do we make these decisions? What kind of meeting do we have, or a public forum to establish these priorities, if there are lands that should be prioritized? And for proposal writing and things like that, I'm also happy to help. My director is supportive of supporting this community and other communities on the Bay. And that's basically it. I look forward to working with you guys over another 20 years that I'll be here.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, it sounds like that would be beneficial, what you're suggesting and offering for the community, for sure. I think how we do this, just thinking out loud, is we and Heidi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, probably advertise the topic. Perhaps it's a work session or something like that, and to get the community, call for action from the community to bring their thoughts and ideas, and have perhaps at that one have Catherine back on to do another quick little presentation, have Paul there to help, and then we just start brainstorming and seeing if it's something that makes sense, if there's some some lands that we can identify, and then work the timeline on the process, if it makes obviously if it makes sense.
That sounds great, Mr. Mayor. I've added it to the list.
Yep, the ever-ending list grows. Any other questions, comments from council?
Not from council, Mr. Mayor, but I will point out that you guys do have your running capital improvement priority list, or your program, and it does include Susan Lake, more for restoration of the pavilion, but that's something that could be expanded in the future, of restoration of the lake or preservation of the wetlands. And I know you mentioned city property. There are several parcels of city property next to the storage yard, as well as on Frank Raby or Rocky, that area. Spring Gravy and Airport, that are wetlands. And we are in the process of our stormwater management plan and drainage map. That's been suggested before that we could utilize those wetlands potentially for stormwater management. So there are some already some projects and ideas that are starting to formulate through that CIP process, but having more conversations about it can maybe help further develop those, and potentially those could tie in and be of a huge benefit to the city and the
Yeah,
community.
no, thanks for bringing that up as well. Yeah, I think once we get into a dedicated meeting and actually start putting everyone's heads together and brainstorming, there'll be probably some good information that would come out of that. So great. Paul, thanks for your thoughts and comments tonight. Let's see, Heidi, is there anyone else for item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda?
There is not, Mr. Mayor, but there will be for committee and advisory board reports.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. We'll move on to item I then, committee and advisory board reports. Sounds like we have Walt Sonnen in attendance tonight.
I guess you better stand up where people can see me here. This is an amazing meeting. It's a full meeting, but hardly anybody's here. Before I start my thing, you guys missed it, but on the radio tonight on KBBI, there was an announcement or a 5-minute section about our library with Cindy Mom and Bobby Sweat came forward and talked about what has been done to the library downstairs, and it was a pretty good presentation. Probably be on the radio tomorrow morning. Okay, I'm here with two hats. One is the president of the Seldovia oil spill response outfit, and we had our annual meeting on the 26th of April and March. It was one day before your last meeting, and I was unaware of that meeting, or I probably would have come. The major events were that let's see, it was a potluck, and we had lots of food. We had maybe including the kids, 20 people. And well attended. Everybody had a good time, and we had board elections, and I was elected president for another year, and I informed people this would be my last year. I think that we need some younger folks. I've been associated with the organization ever since its inception, and in 1990, I guess. And I just feel that we need some more vitality there, and I'm hoping that the organization continues. Todd Paxton, who is the CISPRI manager, has been on our board, and he's on our board because they contribute $12,000 a year for our survival. Largely, that money goes into insurance and whatnot. He does not want to continue, and he appointed one of his assistants there. We have not yet met her, and her name is Jamie Shucks. Anyway, she will come to our meetings in the future, and we will get a chance to meet her. And see, we have an exercise that is scheduled for the 18th of this month, and it will probably be in the slough. We haven't really decided where we're going to do it. May, 18th of May. And we were happy that Liz was at the meeting, and in the absence of our secretary, who was gone for the winter, we had a pretty good set of notes from the meetings, and Jamie Martin, our secretary, did get back the other day, and she has kept up on everything. We don't owe anybody any money. Our taxes are paid and the insurance is paid, and she's been kind of keeping after us. So the other hat that I have is I am the city representative for the Cook Inlet Regional Citizens Advisory Council. And Friday the 5th of this month, I went up to Kenai and attended a meeting there. And it was a pretty good meeting. There have been concerns amongst the oil spill people that the Coast Guard, either they made a regulation or they have looked back and reviewed their regulations, but the boats that go out for these oil spill operations, not our skiffs so much, but there was a exercise just this last weekend sponsored by CISPRI off the end of the Spit, that these boats do not meet the federal regulations, and it's caused quite a bit of stir, because here in Alaska we have fleets of boats that are ready to respond to spills, and the captain of the port, Captain Culpepper, who sits in Anchorage, he's the chief Coast Guard guy in this area, spoke to that, and he is aware of what's going on, and he's working to mitigate those regulations. And it's not that we're completely off the hook to do as we were doing, but certainly towing the line to all of the existing regulations, perhaps we can soften that a little bit, and so we can continue as we are with our oil spill response vessels that are sort of in waiting. We had been concerned as a group, the CIRCAC group was concerned with the staffing of the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. It just seemed like the rats were leaving a sinking ship, to make an analogy. And I think as a group, we were very happy to see that there's some new people on board, and a lot of the empty positions have been filled. The new commissioner is Emma Pokon, Pokon, and she spoke at length, and she has quite a background of this, that, and the other thing. She's a younger woman. She's a lawyer. She has worked with ADEC before. She's a former North Slope mayor, and she sounds like she might rev up the organization a little bit, and so that we can maybe feel like they're on our side again. So that was enlightening. And once again, Captain Mark Bayer, who is in charge of the whole fleet of the Marathon freighters or oil tankers, was there, and he spoke again. He spoke at the meeting a year and a half ago, and what impressed me about him was his emphasis on safety, just over and over and over. And he did the same thing at this meeting and answered questions, more technical questions about the boats and whatnot. And his representative here in Cook Inlet is Paul Mayer, and he retired as the Coast Guard captain of the port about, I'm guessing 6, 8 years ago, and he took over the position of the marathon captain of the port here in Cook Inlet, and he reiterated all the safety stuff and asked questions and whatnot, answered questions. Hillcorp, Dan Marlowe from Hillcorp spoke, and they're still drilling for oil, and some of that is on land, and some of it is in the inlet. And I didn't realize how many wells can be operated from one platform. And he said up to 36 wells can be drilled from one platform. All the drilling goes down the legs of the platform. He said there'll be a jackup rig here in the fall for more drilling. There's drilling going on in Swanson River. He said there's lots of gas around. And they plan a big exercise, the Hillcorp exercise, for contingency oil spill, whatnot, on the 17th and 18th of April. So that's about it in a nutshell. Big
Thanks,
nutshell.
Walt. Hey, I have a quick question for you. When you said talked about the local fleet not being in federal compliance, what's the biggest issue on that? Is it like an emissions thing, current emissions, or just age of vessels, or what is it exactly? Do you know?
You're talking about the regulations for the fishing vessels?
Yeah, correct.
Response? I don't know exactly, but I think there are a lot of like safety regulations for the vessels themselves, and maybe how many radios they're supposed to have, and how much holding tank for holding tank regulations. I don't know. It's not emissions, I don't think. I don't know. There's not a list. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I was just curious if you knew. So, okay. No, sounds good. Any other questions or comments from council for Walt? All right. Thanks, Walt. Appreciate the report.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. You're welcome.
Liz, anyone else tonight for where am I at here? Committee or advisory board reports?
No, that's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, sounds good. Item J, administrative reports. None. Item K, public hearings. Item K1, action memorandum 24-03, approving the certification of the FY23 audit as presented by LG Redfield LLC, certified public accountants. And Heidi, I'll let you take this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have an action memorandum on page 8 of the packet, approving the certification of the FY23 audit as presented this evening. We have Karen Tarver with LG Rayfield LLC here to provide that presentation. She's going to do more of a high level presentation. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through the packet and see it. I know it's quite big, but if you have any questions, she can hopefully answer them or follow up. And then with that, we've used these numbers as previously as discussed in the previous work session to update our budget documents and continue planning moving forward. So thank you and welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me join tonight. We're having a strange thing in Juneau. It's called sunshine, so we're not used to it. So right now my office is very bright, which it usually isn't. So kind of have a glowing head here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and really I'm going to be using what is in your packet, which is the reports that we issued as a result of our audit. And so, as Heidi mentioned, our firm, LG Rayfield, is engaged by you, really the council, to do your audit while we work primarily with management to complete our audit steps and to do what we call non-attest services, which is outside the scope of the audit. We help prepare your draft financials, and then management reviews and accepts those. As a result of our audit, we issue what's called a letter to the board, and then obviously your financial statements are issued as well, and that contains our audit reports. So I was going to go through the letter to the board first. And again, this is required communication that our auditing standards require. We make sure that we're communicating to those charged with governance. So essentially the council as well as senior management are what is considered the governing body governance as far as accounting purposes. So the letter to the city council contains some of the same information that our audit report does. It goes through our responsibilities in relation to a financial statement audit, and I'll go in those a little bit more detail when we go through our report. But some key things here is just to let you know, we have to maintain our independence while we provide the accounting services, helping prepare your financial statements. We have to make sure what we call safeguards are in place. And so we have someone independent of the audit, essentially reviewing the draft financial statements, management reviews and accepts those. And then that independent reviewer on our side also makes sure that we did all the audit steps we should have done over your work, even though we helped prepare those financial statements. If we had any significant risks that we were planning for, we made those known to management as part of our planning. The risks that we had for this year's audit really were kind of the findings that we had from last year and how those carried over into this year. We communicate to you if there's any significant accounting policies. And this year there is one new one. We refer to them as by their numbers. So it's GASB number 96, and the acronym for that, it's subscription-based information technology arrangements. We call them SPIDAs. So if you hear me, I'm saying a SPIDA. So what that is basically if you have a long-term agreement for IT software, basically what this new accounting pronouncement said is that you need to consider that an asset and show that you have entered into an agreement to pay that over time. We looked at the agreements that you have in place, and none met the criteria that needed to be reported under that new standard. We also need to make sure we're making you aware of any accounting estimates that are significant to your financial statements. Those related to your pension and OPEB. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. So essentially that is the PERS program for you guys. And the information really comes from reports from the state of Alaska, but the portion that relates to your city then is incorporated into your financial statements. Also, management's estimate of the net realizable amount that from your accounts receivable, that is an estimate. It's based on typically historical collection, looking at how much people typically pay, and also specifically identifying for any that you deem to be uncollectible. We didn't have any significant difficulties dealing with management. We're always happy to tell you that. We did have several audit adjustments that came up during the year. And so we like to make sure that you're aware of those. The big adjustments we had was while you did hire another accounting firm to come in and help you, they made a few errors that weren't detected by them or by management in kind of how they approached a couple things. And so as a result, it's called unavailable revenue. It's basically revenue that doesn't meet the criteria for your governmental fund presentation. it can't be reflected as revenue yet. And so we had a correction related to that. The biggest thing, and I'll go through it when we get into your financials, was that you had the acquisition of the grader this year, which was entered into, I think, in good faith from everyone's point of view as a lease agreement. Unfortunately, under the accounting and reporting rules, it did not qualify as a lease, and it actually has to be presented in your financial statements as a note payable. So we'll go through kind of that. And then there was, again, another error that was made in the lease receivable amount for the year that was corrected as a result of our audit. And then we had some other small adjustments so we don't consider those significant, but again, they kind of came up as part of the audit process. Some of it was, again, sales tax payable was reconciled during the year. There was a mistake in how that was adjusted, and that was corrected. There was some changes related to your leave balances. There was a timing difference between how some payments that you got were entered into fiscal year 23 that really should have been FY 24. So those kind of changes really are to make sure that your financial statements are presenting as accurate as possible. So while they probably aren't considered significant changes, we did go ahead and work with management and propose those changes. And then the last one, the reason I left this on here is just, again, I've talked to management about it. I want to make sure that the council's aware of it, that there's a whole list of small liability amounts. And it's just little pots of money that someone probably a long time ago donated to the city and said, please use this for this or use this for that. And those balances just carry forward year after year. And it's quite possible that at some point, basically, you had expenses that really would have qualified in kind of releasing those, if you want to think about it from restriction. It's just that I think maybe over time, that information wasn't captured correctly. And so what we've recommended to management on those is just to work through them basically and really kind of figure out, is this really money that still needs to be shown as a liability that has to be used for this specific purpose, or can you go ahead and recognize that were there costs that, satisfied basically the donor's kind of restriction on those funds. So kind of, again, this is in writing, so that's why I'm kind of just jumping around in it. I don't need to kind of go through all of it. But I do want to scroll down to this part. So this is where if we have control weaknesses that are raised to the level of being either what's called significant deficiency or material weakness, those are the ones that we feel like need to be communicated to you at the city council level. So these are very similar to last year. And we just, because of the timing, last year's audit wasn't issued, till spring of 2023. So you were already similar to this year. You're already so far into the year that really there wasn't time to fully basically take action and resolve the open issues. And so a lot of the conditions that existed when we did our 22 audit were still there for our 23 audit. I would say though, I always hate telling people, you haven't fixed things yet, but you have made progress. So management, brought in the other accounting firm, and also, Jan works very closely with us during the audit. And I feel like the adjustments we had this year were much less than the year before. And I would think going forward, it'll probably be even less. So again, a lot of it has to do with kind of closing out those accounts, making sure, and a lot of the information is internally okay. As you're reviewing reports throughout the year, the information's there, it's captured, you're able to make decisions on it. Really, the issue comes in that when we prepare the financial statements and they're done in accordance with what's called generally accepted accounting principles. They have to be presented in a certain way, or transactions have to be accounted in a certain way. And so that's really kind of what this finding is related to, is that while you're capturing all the information in your accounting records and you have it in your internal reports, it's not in accordance with financial reporting standards. And so our recommendation really related to this is similar to the prior year, in looking to see if you can find the right kind of consultant accounting firm to be assisting with that year-end close process, or even assisting maybe on a quarterly basis to try to, when you provide us the information for audit, that it's adjusted, and we called it closed, but the books are closed so that the balances are essentially in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and ready to audit. And then the second one related to the lease standard. This again was very similar, or is a continuation of last year. Last year was 2022 was the first year that GASB 87, which was specific to leases, went into effect. And again, when you have a new lease standard go into place, best practice is to develop a written kind of procedure. It doesn't necessarily need to be council approved, but a written procedure as far as how it's going to be accounted for, making sure that you're understanding, the information, how it needs to be captured and reported. And again, due to the timing of last year's completed audit and then this year's, that hadn't been completed yet at the time we were doing our audit work. So I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions on either of those findings before I go on.
Any questions, comments from council?
I'm good so far.
Okay, Karen, quick question. So if the audits, from what I'm hearing, you're saying if our audits had been done in a more timely manner, then that we may have had a little better opportunity, obviously, for the second one. The first one sounds like we just need to have a little additional help on getting our year-end close prepared properly.
Right. I think a lot of it is, Jan does a great job for you, but she's one person, right? And so the day-to-day ends up sucking up her time. And so she really doesn't have that extra time to kind of prepare for the audit. And when I say prepare for the audit, some of that is, it's beyond just getting the information into QuickBooks. It's really stepping back and looking at, okay, here's the balance of that. Does that make sense? Does it agree to the, these other things? And again, then the final step and is it captured in such a way that's ultimately how it's going to end up needing to be in the financial statements. But yes, your question about timing, again, because the close process in 2022, a lot of it was trying to get that lease implementation into place. This year, we still had delays as far as getting the information. I know Jan was working with the other accounting firm, trying to get this information. I think, here you have essentially 2 more months left and you're closing out 24, right? So I would say, trying to jump on these and figure out what's the solution for closing 24 would be perfect timing to kind of start figuring that out now and looking ahead. Because I know Heidi had mentioned possibly you'll be triggering what's called a compliance audit, or a single audit, essentially. So if you have enough federal or state funding, you may need what's called a single audit, which means that we would actually be also auditing some of your grant funding to even like, basically we have to look at your controls over compliance. Like this audit that we did really just looks at financial reporting. Single audit dives into the compliance aspects as well.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
so just making sure that you kind of have the resources and have set aside the time to address this would be good.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that explanation on all of that. Appreciate that.
Yep, you're welcome. So I will continue, but feel free if there are questions to come up to interrupt. So this is last year's, and again, we have those both being repeated. And so that is the letter to the board. So that kind of gives you the overall. And then the next document is a letter from management back to us. We call it the management representation letter, and we give management the wording from a template, but they're able to go through and review it and customize it if they want. But essentially, it's them asserting back that we gave you what you needed for the audit. We know it's our responsibility to make sure we have controls in place to make sure that information is captured correctly. So the second document is your actual audited financial statements. And so our opinion is on page 10 of the PDF, printed page 10 of the PDF. So the first paragraph, as I mentioned in the letter to the board, is very similar to exact same wording. But again, I want to just kind of, sorry, I jumped the wrong, let's see. We want to go to, here we go. We want to go to our opinion letter. So this is the opinion letter. So again, here's the responsibility to management or responsibility of management. And then following that is responsibility of the auditors, essentially. So we've kind of talked about that management is responsible for putting controls in place and capturing information correctly for reporting. And then we're auditing that. Our opinion, or opinions, because what happens for governments is that we're issuing actually multiple opinions because each of your governmental activities and then each major fund and then the aggregate of everything else are what we call opinion units, essentially. And so we audit each of those separately. And so our opinion is the second paragraph, and it's exactly what you want. It's called an unmodified opinion. So it's basically that financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position of, and then it goes through all your opinion units in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles of the United States. So, and then it tells you that we did our audit in accordance with what's called generally accepted auditing standards, as well as government auditing standards. And that is because of your federal and state financial assistance that you have. We have to use that government auditing standards as well. So while we did have some findings and we did have proposed adjustments, again, your financial statements have an unmodified opinion, which is exactly what you want. So the key things here, I was going to just show you real quick on your table of contents. There's actually kind of three parts to your financial statements. This is called, this section right here, the basic financials. That's what we're actually issuing an opinion on. And it is your government-wide financials as well as the fund financial statements and the notes to the financials. And then you have what's called required supplemental information, which is you have pension and OPEB schedules, as well as budget to actual schedules for each of your major funds. So major funds are those that are large enough, they are significant enough as a whole that they need to be separately presented. And so the general fund's always major, and then it's basically if a fund is equal to 5 or 10% of the total, then it's a major fund. So we have to do that. And so over this RSI, our opinion is that we're making sure that this information is supported or in agreement with the basic financial statements, but we're not actually issuing an opinion over it. And then the last part is this, which is called additional supplementary information. And so this is, again, it's for what's called your non-major special funds, which are those that are not equal to 5 or 10% of the total. So it's your smaller funds. And again, we're making sure that they're in agreement with the financial statements as a whole, but we don't issue an opinion over that. And then we've gone through the findings, but if you wanted to read through those in detail, that's the schedule of finding and responses on page 65. And then on page 63 is our report over internal controls. and compliance in accordance with GAS. And what that letter tells you is that we look at internal controls in order to issue an opinion over your financial statements, but we don't issue, our opinion isn't on the internal controls themselves. It's more on the amounts and disclosures that are in your basic financial statements. And then if matters, other matters or compliance matters came up as part of our audit, we would report them. And that is the 2 findings that we've already gone through. So that's kind of the overall, but I did want to just kind of highlight some of the things on your financial statements themselves, some of the changes maybe from last year to this year, or just to provide a little bit more information. So I apologize, this may be kind of small on your screen, but this is what's called your governmental fund balance sheet. So again, these are each of your major funds and then the total of those other funds. So what I wanted to show you here is that in the general fund, you had a positive ending fund balance for the year, which is great. And there is now an amount called restricted for capital projects, this 44,000. What that relates to is the 2% sales tax that the city put into place for the summer. And that is the net amount that was remaining at June 30 that is reserved essentially or restricted for the future greater payments. And so because that was essentially the voters voted on that, that is why that's considered restricted, essentially, because you have that external restriction on those funds that it has to be used for the greater payments. And so that money is essentially part of when you take assets less liabilities, that's what you've left over with is fund balance. Now, the remaining amount shows 31,000 of assigned, but as you may remember from past conversations, you know that you have 800,000 of cash, and so I put together a spreadsheet to kind of show this a little bit better while I try to explain it. But under accounting for generally accepted accounting principles, you can't show assigned amounts and make unassigned go into a deficit position. And so these highlighted amounts here are the amounts that are in AMLIP right now. And so if I take the sum of all of these less that negative, it equals the 31,000 that was showing as assigned fund balance. And that's because essentially any fund balance you have 76,000, 44,000 is the 2%. Basically, that's restricted for your 2% sales tax for greater payments. And the rest of it you've assigned, and you can only assign up to the amount that you have unassigned balance. So again, if we have 76,000 and we know that 44,000 of it is restricted, we only have 31,000 that we can show in your financial statements as assigned, essentially. And so I wanted to share this. When I went through this with Heidi and Jan, they thought it would be beneficial to go through it just to explain that we can't show this on the financial statements, but it is something to keep in mind that essentially, you've essentially assigned out, you have the money put in to the different accounts in AMLIP, and that is great. But from a fund balance perspective, you're only able to show, the 31,000. And really why that is, why you don't have fund balance equal to your cash, if you think about it, is because you've used that for, you have cash, but you also have liabilities, you have receivables, which you haven't gotten. So you haven't gotten those receivables cash. You also have fixed assets, which in your governmental funds don't show as capital assets. Those are a reduction of your fund balance because they get expensed when you buy them. So I just wanted to make sure we went through that. I know that was something that had come up, a couple years in the audit, was trying to make sure that it was understood kind of the difference between kind of what those amounts in your AMLIP account are versus your fund balance presentation in your financial statements. And you will notice, so over in your permanent fund, the investments now are broken out from cash. That's a change as well. In the past, you just had what was called cash and cash equivalents. And now you've actually moved into, through your Charles Schwab account, into types of assets that for financial reporting have to be presented as investments, essentially. So in your permanent fund, that is essentially the balance of your Charles Schwab account. There was a little bit of cash. So basically amounts held in Charles Schwab that weren't in investments, I believe is what that is. And then the other 42,000 that's still in AMLIP is over in here. And again, it seemed to be the way this is presented and in accordance with how management's presented it to us was that Charles Schwab really is the principal amount that the council is wanting to restrict and have that be the permanent fund. And really then you'll be using the earnings over time possibly to fund city operations or special projects, but really your plan is to try to leave that permanent fund balance intact essentially. So I just wanted to kind of highlight those were some changes on your balance sheet. So the statement of activities, and again, I apologize, this is super small to look at, but this is on page 32 of your PDF or of the printed copy. And what I wanted to point out here is in the Public Works Department, you'll see that the expenses are pretty high compared to kind of what maybe you expected. And then you also have a new function called debt service. And so I'm going to jump now to note number 10, which is, I mentioned the grader, and that is exactly what it relates to, is that for the grader, when we kind of really dove into the agreement and how it was structured, basically under accounting reporting standards, it didn't qualify as being shown as a lease. So it shows as a note payable. And so the balance of that, you had 297,000 of proceeds, essentially. If you want to think about it, it's almost like you took out a loan, you got 297, and then you use that to turn around and buy the grader. And so now you have an asset on your books, basically, of 297, and then you have the note payable on your books as well. And so how that shows from an accounting standpoint is, let's see if I can go to your general fund. So in the general fund, under your Public Works division. So when the budget was originally developed, it was really, this was the payment that was expected to have been made in fiscal 23, thinking that, again, it was a lease and that you were just going to have the annual payments is what needed to show. The way accounting and reporting says is that you need to show the full amount as expense in the year you enter into that agreement. But then what happens is you show an other financing source, which is proceeds from financing agreement. So as I said, how it's really capturing it is it's basically saying that you got proceeds, but then you use that to buy the asset. So it's kind of a paper transaction. And then the payments as they go out, those are captured as debt service, and they're split between principal and interest. And the reason that this is higher than the payment annual payment's about 51,000, 52,000, is that in addition is that you had to accrue interest because so it's an accrual, it adds interest expense and it goes onto your balance sheet as a payable basically because the payment is you had interest from the time you did a payment through June 30, basically, that hadn't been paid yet, but you go ahead and expense it in the year that interest basically becomes a payable, an obligation. And so going forward, you will just have the annual payments. And so that's where you'll just have the debt service payments. You won't have the large capital expenditure, and you won't have the proceeds from the financing agreement within your general fund, essentially. Note 7, which is your capital asset note. Again, this is where you can see that you added 297,000 for your machinery and equipment. So that got added as a fixed asset this year to your capital assets. And then, sorry, I was going to go back up here. So again, on your balance sheet, you don't show capital assets for your governmental fund presentation. They become fixed assets on your government-wide, basically. That's where your assets get added and presented. So this capital asset balance right here, this 10 million, includes essentially the fact that we've added that asset. And then you'll notice that you have the note payable. This is the long-term portion of it. And then this is the current portion. And that is the principal amount. Basically, the sum of those is the principal amount that you owe. So essentially, you've added an asset and you've added a liability. On a go-forward basis, you'll have your payments that will actually be actual cash coming out, which will go to your debt service, and then you will be depreciating that asset, and that happens on your government-wide presentation. So I'm going to pause there. I tried to walk you through kind of, I know that's a little bit different than probably how you budgeted for it and how you thought that was going to be accounted for. So I'm happy to answer if there's any questions on that.
Okay, any additional questions for Karen from council?
So great. I don't hear any. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take 5 minutes and then I'll be done. I'm sorry this is taking longer than you maybe anticipated. So
no, you're fine. We've been through. We know these take time.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to, as I mentioned, kind of changes from last year to this year. So note 4 is again talking about kind of cash equivalents, and then note 5 is a new note that has your investment policy, and then also kind of shows the different investment types. And because this is new, as part of why I'm highlighting this for you, is that your investments have to be classified or valued using different input levels. So yours are all input level 1, which means that basically that there's quoted prices on an active market for identical assets. So if something's publicly traded or traded, on the stock market, that is level 1. It's the easiest to value type of asset or investment. So again, that's kind of the change there that I wanted to make sure we'd highlighted. We looked at capital assets quickly. Just a reminder from last year, we added what's called a right to use asset, which is essentially if you have a long-term lease agreement, again, that you have the right to use that. In this case, it's the Jackaloff Dock land. And so it becomes an asset with a corresponding liability, essentially. And then we mentioned, or we touched on the long-term liabilities. So your annual leave or accrued leave is something that's considered kind of long-term. Again, it's amounts you have to pay out. You have the lease payable, which is the agreement we just talked about, and then your note payable, which was new. We also have a new note, it's note 16, which again relates to that restricted fund balance. And that is the seasonal sales tax, that 2% sales tax. And so this is just, again, a narrative describing the fact that you had 44,000 left over as of June 30, 23. That's, restricted to be used to pay for the grader. And wanted to also quickly highlight, there are some new accounting standard pronouncements. Luckily, I think Jan and our firm and my staff that help on the audit are all cheering because both of these are relatively straightforward. It is nothing like leases or SPIDAs that we just went through these past 2 years. No big changes from an accounting reporting standpoint in the next couple years are planned. So we're happy for that. And so again, if I know you're working on your budget, and I know the 23 numbers are typically incorporated so that you can see for comparison sakes. But again, within your audited financial statements, the major funds show original budget and final budget with the actual numbers, so that you can again see kind of what was budgeted and what final numbers were. There's also a required disclosure if you have actual numbers in excess of budget. And so I did want to point this out just because it looks big, the amount that public works is over. But again, it's because that actual includes the capturing of the whole grader costs as a cost in this year. And then again, the debt service didn't have an amount budgeted for it because it was a new way of presenting. So that is the kind of conclusion of my remarks, I guess, things I wanted to make sure I touched base with you and showed you kind of the significant changes year to year. Again, I think, Jan's doing a great job and she was very patient with us. We asked her lots of questions and I know being audited is not fun. So we appreciate her and Heidi's help during the audit and pulling these financial statements together. And again, just to reiterate, you have an unmodified opinion, which is what you want, your fund balance overall. So when you take the whole city as a whole, from your governmental fund presentation, you have a fund balance of about 1.2 million. And so, for the amount of assets you have is 2.8. Kind of liabilities 1.5. So again, you're in a good position with the money that you've been able to accumulate, the establishment of your permanent fund and the earnings that it's going to be generating for you. While you have obligated yourself to some debt, which is new, you didn't have that in the past. You have an identified revenue stream, which is your 2% sales tax, which will pay for that debt. So, nothing rose to a level that we were concerned about your financial position or management was concerned about, your financial position going forward. So.
Well, I would say that's good news, all in all. So, that's good to hear. I know we're waiting on getting the final results, and as we look forward to audit results every year, so hopefully we can see that year over year we're improving. So if we're not improving, then we have problems. So if we're improving, we're following the steps and doing what we're supposed to be doing, and obviously learning from our mistakes. So no, that's good. That's good news overall. Thank you, Karen, for you guys taking the time to work with staff. We appreciate that, and hopefully they continue to learn from you guys as well, and then that'll only benefit us going forward. So
great. We're happy to serve as your auditors, and we are here year round. So if questions come up during the year, we always tease people, we don't like surprises. So we'd much rather hear about it beforehand. If something big's happening, it's kind of nice to clue us in. But Jan and Heidi are great. They're communicate with us a lot. So we really appreciate that. And
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's what we want. So that's what we, expect of our managers and our finance officers. So yeah, no, good to hear the reinforcement on that. So any final questions, comments from council for Karen? Jen, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know if this is really for Karen or maybe Heidi. I don't know. I'm on looking at page 46 of the audit. And a couple of things kind of stuck out that I'm wondering why they were so drastic. Like the licenses, the permits, and the fines. We were only thinking we'd have 25 and we had 10,000. What are those? What is that?
I can take this through the mayor. Yes, thank you. The licenses, permits, and fines includes the business license, dog license. It includes building permits, any other permits, conditional use permits. And we don't really see as many fines. But we do see those licenses and permits come through the office. Those are another one that it is kind of hard to budget for that revenue. And we utilize revenue estimates based on previous years. I can look back and see what exactly that increase was. But instinct tells me I think we were just budgeting low for historically over a few years. And then for whatever reason, we definitely had a lot more building permits. I'll double check on what some of the other things were because that would not account for all of it, but that's what's in that category.
Okay, and then the miscellaneous below that, same thing. It's quite a difference.
I will get back to you on that one because that was one that I might have that. I made note of it in the budget. Let me look. Miscellaneous. I made note to look into that, so I will get back to you on that one.
Okay. And then one final, I was looking at a few pages down on page 48. We had police. So I'm trying to think of what year. Obviously, we had a police officer in this point in time because there's salaries. How much of the year was this? It looks like, was he here half a year? When did he leave?
I believe that was December, but let me go double check on that one as well. I think that was a full half year and he left in December.
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay, so that would make sense.
It was.
Okay. It's hard to think of like, oh, this was last June. So like thinking back of when that was, but okay, that makes sense. I think that's all I really had. Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate that. All right. Anyone else? All right. Sounds good. Karen, thanks again for your presentation this evening and try to enjoy what's left of it.
thank you very much. Have a good evening.
I see the sun has slowly gone down there.
Sun's on the mountain still, so I might get out there.
There you go. All right. Well,
thanks.
Yeah, thanks again. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, well, that was good news. All right, so that brings us to we're on action memorandum 24-03. That was the presentation by our auditors with generally good news, so that's good. And that brings us to council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may include one more thing.
Yep, go ahead, Heidi.
And looking, I will still continue to look into what that 10,000 in miscellaneous was. I'm sorry, I don't have that right in front of me, but in looking into actuals for FY21 and FY22, that's actually a significant decrease. 21 FY21, we had a 35,473 in miscellaneous, and in FY22, we had 37,235. So I will double check in exactly what that is, but I do think that we are getting better at allocating out and making sure we classify everything. And I'll get a better answer back. But I wanted to just point that out, that that is a decrease.
Okay. I did find one more actually, a few pages down. For the boat haul out,
Yes.
it has dues and fees and other expenses were pretty high. That one ran in the red. What is that from trying to get rid of those boats?
That actually
what are
is
those?
here. Let me pull up the page exactly. So
Yeah,
that one was
61.
very disappointing. And something that we asked LG Rayfeld about because it doesn't capture all of our revenues. And the reason for that is because we have to collect the revenues within 60 days. And some of those revenues came in after the end of the fiscal year. So we weren't able to capture all of the revenues for the boat haul out, which was really disappointing. And then the expenditures, if I pull it up. What page are you on? Remind me.
61.
61.
Mhm.
And then so for expenditures,
It's the bottom two, dues and fees and other. Is that?
dues and fees and other. Let me look back at the budget report. I believe you're correct, and that had to do with the boats, but let me just verify that real quick. Dues and fees. So we have budgeted 4,100 and it is a difference of 9,000 and I'm not sure why. That's a good catch. I will see why that is so much higher. And I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Any other questions for the manager? Comments on the audit? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to public presentation on, or public comment on action memorandum 24-03. Liz, do we have anyone signed up for that?
No, we have no one signed up for public comment and no one in the room.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action on action memorandum 24-03.
I'll make a motion to approve memorandum 24-03.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Keith Lee to approve action memorandum 24-03. Was the second, was it by Swick?
Rojas.
Oh, Rojas. Okay, sorry, there's 2 or 3 of you there. So with a second by Rojas. Any additional comment before we vote on the approval of action memorandum 24-03? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on the approval of action memorandum 24-03. All those in favor, Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Keithley?
Aye.
And Langvart?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. All right, thank you everyone for that. Item K2, ordinance 24-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, amending chapter 2.22, Fire Department. This was introduced back on March 27th, and we'll go ahead and let staff take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is part of a two-part approach. The fire department, just for some history, and EMS department has amended their bylaws, and that was on March 20th. And in the amendments of their bylaws, they've changed the kind of the structure of the command. So instead of having the fire chief as the lead department head, they've vested the department leadership in the heads of the three divisions, the fire department, the EMS, and the dispatch chief. And so according to our code, is in city code that the fire department is the head of that. So in order to conform with the department's new bylaws, offering up this amendment to the code, and it reads that instead of the fire chief, it would read as division chiefs. And if you look on page 94 of your packet, and in section 2.22.020, fire chief would change to division chiefs, and the division chiefs shall be the heads of the fire department, and they shall take their instructions from the city manager. And this is to fall in line with what the department themselves has put into their bylaws. The bylaws are the next item on the agenda, and those are on page 98 of your packet. And this has been an ongoing process through quite a few years, and I know Council Member Swick might be able to speak to more of the history of that. But you'll see the new command structure on page 100 of your packet within the bylaws, and you'll see the chain of command and the duties of the officers. So the next piece going on to this will be an action memorandum to approve the bylaws of the fire department. And I've included in that packet the previous 2015 bylaws and the 2011 bylaws. So I guess I'll turn it over to council for questions if there's anything else that I can clarify on the ordinance.
Any questions, comments for the city clerk on the ordinance? All right, thank you. Okay, let's see. So we're on ordinance 24-07. Okay, any further discussion on ordinance 24-07? Okay, I'll just make a quick comment. Yep, I'll definitely be in support of ordinance 24-07. I can appreciate the our fire and EMS and dispatch getting together and working on this over the lengthy period of time. Obviously, our department consists of a number of volunteers, and it's basically these guys doing what they need to do to make sure that our city has coverage and leadership going forward. So I commend them for taking the time to work through their bylaws and as well, get basically reorganized here. So, and the ordinance is the formal piece of that. And then obviously, as the clerk said, we'll follow that up with the approval of the new bylaws. Any other comments, questions before we go to public? Okay, Liz, anyone from the public signed up for comment on ordinance 24-07?
No, we have nobody previously signed up online and no one in the room.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action on ordinance 24-07.
Eric Campbell.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 24-07 and an ordinance of the city council, of the city of Seldovia, amending chapter 2.22 of the fire department.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve ordinance 24-07 by Kennedy with a second by Rojas. Any further discussion on the ordinance before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of ordinance 24-07. All those in favor, Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
and Langbart.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative, 1 absent, and that was the approval of ordinance 24-07. Okay, thank you, everyone. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business. Item M1, action memorandum 24-04, approving the bylaws of the Seldovia Volunteer Fire and EMS Department. And I'll let staff make a quick note or comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on page 97 of your packet is the action memorandum. In order not to put the bylaws in there twice, I kind of just grouped them together. And then on page 98, you'll find that the current bylaws that were just passed. And as I mentioned earlier, the 2015 and 2011 bylaws are in the packet as well. And Jocelyn is online if we have any additional questions for her as well on any of the specifics, but can go through the changes, but this is really the department's bylaws, and so I can take any questions on those if anybody has any questions about the changes.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and throw it over to council for any questions or comments on the new bylaws. Boy, no one's real talkative tonight. All right. Must have wore everybody out. Okay. Yep, obviously same comments as before. I'll be in support of approving action memorandum 24-04. This represents the work that fire EMS and dispatch have all done to come together and make the departments more streamlined. And basically, hopefully better working organization for all in the future. All right, any additional comment before we go to public? Okay, hearing none. Anyone signed up to speak on action memorandum 24-04?
No, Mr. Mayor, nobody has signed up online and there's nobody in the room for public comment.
All right, sounds good. We'll bring it back to council for final action on action memorandum 24-04.
Mayor Campbell,
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve action memorandum 24-04, approving the bylaws of the Seldovia Volunteer Fire Department and EMS Department.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Kennedy to approve action memorandum 24-04, and I believe that second was by Keithley. Any additional questions, comments on action memorandum 24-04 before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of action memorandum 24-04. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Keithley, and Langbart.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, 5 in the affirmative, 1 absent, and that was action memorandum 24-04 is approved. All right, item M2, resolution 24-33, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing the city manager to apply to the State of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation for a loan from the Alaska Clean Water Fund for the project entitled Seldovia Sewer Improvements. We'll go ahead and turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is one step in the process of securing the loan funds for the sewer improvement project, which is a 2-phase project. The first to be repair the lift station, the septic lift station down by Inside Beach, and the second is to provide hopefully some repair and improvement for the inflow and infiltration into the sewer system. We did fill out so these funds were originally included for public comment and as projects through the ADEC for the purchase of new pumps for both lift stations, and as a portion of the project for the Seldovia Slough and Sewer Improvement Project, that would not be covered by VSW. The amount of the funds totaled $543,125 for both projects. In discussion with ADEC, they recommended that we submit a questionnaire that would change the scope of both projects and combine them for an overall Seldovia Sewer Improvement Project in order to address some of our urgent immediate needs. And this is the next step. We filled out the questionnaire. We completed that process to update the scope. It went out for public comment. This is the next step that once approved, I can fill out the loan paperwork online. We've already started the environmental review and the historical preservation paperwork, sent that out. So we are doing everything we can to get this done as quickly as possible with the goal to hopefully have those repairs done before June. That's really close, I know. The ADEC felt confident that they could turn around that environmental review and the historical preservation review in very short order, and hopefully have funds to us in the next couple of weeks. The other part of the process is that we were required to put out a RFP for procurement, and we did send that out a couple of weeks ago. That closes next week, and hopefully if we have some qualifying bidders, we'll be able to present that at the April 29th meeting. And then, this is all, we're doing what we can, but it all depends on getting this funding lined up in a timely manner, getting the contractor in a timely manner, and getting the project completed sooner than later. So that's what this is for. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Oh, I would comment that on whereas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth whereas, part of the resolution template did include, and it actually is in the loan paperwork, that we have to include what timeline we would have for the loan. So a 15-year term with a finance rate calculated pursuant to state regulations. That finance rate, rather the amount of forgiveness for a large portion of the loan is 100%. And then for the smaller portion is at 75%. So while the loan itself is for $543,125, I don't have the total off the top of my head. I apologize for that, but I think it was like less than 20,000 that we would be on the hook for the 15-year loan. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. Appreciate that. All right. Any questions, comments for the manager on resolution 24-33?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of this resolution 24-33. And glad to hear that there's something out there that can help us out. Thank you, Heidi, for moving forward with this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? I'll let the record reflect also that Councilmember Payton has joined us. Okay, yep, I too also be in support of resolution 24-33. Yeah, this is, I feel, a good opportunity for us to get this this piece dealt with, or pieces dealt with, and a great opportunity for this not to cost us a lot. So whatever that smaller portion is that we'd be on the hook for is certainly worth getting the larger pot of money and being able to fulfill a much needed repairs on our sewer system. So I think this is good, a good piece to put forward and approve. Any other comments, questions before we go to public? Okay, Liz, anyone from the public signed up for resolution 24-33?
No, Mr. Mayor, we don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action on resolution 24-33.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept resolution 24-33.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve resolution 24-33 with a second by Langbart. Any additional comments before we vote on resolution 24-33? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 24-33. All those in favor, Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Keithley.
Aye.
And Langbart.
Aye.
All right, motion is approved with 6 in the affirmative. Okay, thank you, everyone. And that's going to take us to item N, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did not have time to do a written report today. I was finishing up that budget presentation, so sorry for that. I'll do a quick verbal report, which is some of the ongoings for the last couple of weeks. Today, we did have a pretty significant water leak sprout on Dock Street. It was impressive to see at first glance, and the water was shut off. Crew plans to begin the dig tomorrow. So we hope to get that repaired in quick order. We know that Dock Street is a problem area for us, and it is included in our planning project with VSW. So we are long awaiting for that to be hopefully reconciled in the future. As I stated, we did send out an RFP for our sewer lift station. We have received a couple of questions about it. I hope to spend a little bit more time answering those questions this week, and hopefully receiving some qualified bidders next week that we can present at the next council meeting. And as I said, we did complete the environmental review paperwork. I started the loan paperwork. Now with the resolution, I can upload that and continue. And we'll keep moving ahead with trying to secure that funding. Position update, we hired Amanda Miller for Public Works as an operator in training. We still have a position for groundskeeper and line handler open, and I have applications on my desk for both. So I hope to be able to complete interviews later this week or beginning of next week. We will be looking at posting our harbor positions here in the next couple of weeks. And we are anticipating that we'll keep the Public Works position open. We're anticipating having to hire another here in a couple of months, and we'll update that to hopefully include that we're seeking either a Public Works 1 or a Public Works 2 operator with some experience. We are working, I should say RADSI, and our help from Mark with ARWA spent 2 weeks working on our response to ADEC for our wastewater discharge permit notice of violation. We have a pretty solid response that we'll be sending out by the end of the month, as well as a pretty good start for our best management practice that was required and our quality assurance protection plan. Am I just making stuff up, Bradsy? Yes, that's it. It's called the QAP. So the BMP and the QAP is almost done. Well, it's done, but we need to submit them and then get their comments back. But definitely making a significant progress on that. I'm really thankful for that help and support. it's been very beneficial for the city. We submitted 4 CDS appropriations requests. So as I mentioned, we did for the raw water transmission line, for this building, siding and plumbing and insulation, new doors, insulation, windows for the city office, and fuel and roof. So, buildings, I'll get the timeline for you on that. And we'll see what goes through. Excitingly enough, we heard back from Senator Stevens' office, as we mentioned earlier, that, let me see this email, and the operating budget, let's see here. Nope, we're looking at capital budget passed by the Senate, Seldovia's raw water transmission line replacement for $250,000, which wasn't the whole total, but is half, has been included along with Homer's Harbor Expansion General Investigation Project, which was the project that the city of Seldovia passed a resolution for, and the marine vessel Tustamina replacement vessel, 23 million in toll credits and 92 million in federal, was included in that budget. So also in the operating budget includes a 175 million one-time funding for education, equivalent to 680 BSA increase, 5.2 million for Head Start, along with some other support for the Oscar Reed Zacks program, the school lunch program, 20 million for the community assistance program, which will help ensure 30 million payment in FY26, similar to this year's. So that program is slated to continue as long as these pass and continue through. And 20 million in AMHS in case federal grants are lower than what the governor budgeted. So the capital is now in the House and the operating is now in the Senate. And we'll see, we'll keep an eye. Liz has been really fantastic at keeping an eye on these budgets and bills as they go through, and we'll let you know how that shakes out. Let's see. I met with Moffitt and Nickel last week. I've met with them twice now, actually, and we have a meeting scheduled with MARAD next Monday with Moffitt and Nickel in attendance. That's very exciting. They're supposed to get me their final scope of work and rate schedule early this week, so we'll be able to sign off on that. But we're already starting work and looking forward to continuing with this Jackaloff Bay Dock project. I mentioned the raw water transmission line. We also have received some correspondence from Representative Vance about the USPS service in the community. She's aware of the hit we're receiving this week and reached out to a representative from Senator Sullivan's office. If you know, I know that there was some inventive ways being discussed. Tom from Smoky Bay reached out to me while I was gone, and they were going to contract a barge to bring mail over, but for whatever various reason, it wasn't approved by USPS. So I do plan on making some more rounds of phone calls tomorrow and seeing if there is another short-term solution that we can suggest or provide for the coming week, as well as they reached out for the status of the bridge. Representative Vance's office did, as she's become aware of the petition in the community to change the name of the bridge. So they were just wanting to double check and verify if it was state or city. And that's really what I have for now.
Eric Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
Just got one quick one for her. I thought that Mark, they said he has an airport at home, a runway at home. And I thought they were going to provide the mail service to us through that from Anchor Point. I just heard that when I was over there last week. Just thought I'd put that little bug in your ear. Maybe it has something to do with the mail regulations. I don't know. But that was kind of one of their original plans, I thought. And then the other question is, anybody really looked at the ferry schedule for the summer? And we're aware that we're not gonna have ferry service from the Kennecott, the third week of the month when the Tustamina crosses the Gulf. We're gonna be essentially the third week of each month with one ferry service rather than three. That's not gonna change.
No, that's not scheduled to change. The Kennecott is no longer servicing Seldovia.
I didn't realize the whole thing when we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. Was just in there trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. And I noticed that we're gonna be, was that eight stops this summer less? And
So was there a question in there, John, or was you just making a statement on that?
I guess I didn't realize that when the Tustamina was gonna do the cross Gulf, it goes across once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we would see the service from the Kennecott in the past. I know they had declined on making the stop this winter, but I didn't realize there's no stops at all for this summer.
Yeah, no, that's the way I understood it, is that once it's gone, it's gone. So
Yeah. So anyway.
Yep. So yeah, we'll have a void on that week when they're gone on their cross Gulfer down the chain, then we get nothing.
Right. It's essentially we'll have one ferry service for that entire 7-day period or 10-day period. Approximately the third week of each month.
Yep. So we will have to, till this gets all sorted out down the road. We're just gonna have to make do for now. I mean, they've made up their mind that they're not gonna have the unless something changes. But yeah, I don't anticipating it changing after this for the Kennecott. I had a quick question on the Dock Street leak. Is that in the same place as one of the old ones? Or are they going to have to do an asphalt cut?
It is not in the same place and it is bubbled up. I mean, there's damage there. Yeah, we're going to have to do some repair.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Some pretty significant damage. Just drive by when you come home.
Okay. Yeah, I left this morning, so I must have missed it. All right. Any other questions, comments for the manager? Okay. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate that. Item O, informational items not requiring action. Next regularly scheduled meeting, April 22nd, will be postponed until April 29th. At 6 p.m. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council mayor comments concerning the items not on the agenda. Rojas.
Just thank you for everyone for your great job you do and for the public that was here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Kennedy.
I'm good, thanks.
Swick.
No comment.
Peyton.
Thank you, staff, for all your hard work and you guys are great. Thank you.
Keithley.
No comment.
And Langvart.
No comment.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, staff. Appreciate all the work going back again on the audit. So that was great to hear. Good news, and then obviously continuing forward to get through this budget process, and then we'll get back on track here. So with that, I'll go ahead and look for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
Motion to adjourn with a second. Is there any objections? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Okay,
Good night.
have a good night.
Good night. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, guys.